Hello again. So this is going to be the second video. I'm still relatively new to this. Again, in my first video, I went over Margaret Sanger baby deletions, specifically regards to the majority of the BINO Nation audience and their population demographic. Once again, apologize, I'm still rather new to this. So I intended to have this kind of a stretch of video, pause, continue on, but because of me being new to doing this type of stuff, I'm actually having to make a second video. And then once I finish this segment, we'll probably have to do a third, maybe a fourth. So I'm going to get into what I promised before, okay? And actually, I can't collect the soil out here because I am on a Native American reservation, and out of respect for their wishes, I will have to go do that somewhere else. But as promised to the audience, I am here. Now, I mentioned to you that this also has to do with the Jonathan Majors situation. And what that means is a second part to what I'm observing with what's going on is not just the feminism and the Eve situation of females in our culture or in American society, and specifically in minority communities, being sold the idea that certain things such as baby deletion are a way to freedom as a female because of reproductive rights and all that other stuff, that it was specifically targeted as a means of genocide. I'll turn this heater off. A soft sell to kind of do to the minority of the population of the United States, the undesirable peoples, what Stalin and Hitler and Pol Pot did by force in the last 200 years, okay, to groups of people that they thought were undesirable. For example, Hitler and the Jews and the Gypsies, or Stalin and the kulaks, mostly Ukrainians. So now I'm on the Acoma Pueblo reservation, about an hour west of Albuquerque. Okay? And this is a Native American tribe. And this is also home to the oldest continuously inhabited community, the oldest town or city in the United States. These people have built a town or city on top of a 360-foot sandstone outcrop. And in this area, there's a creek nearby. They managed to raise the sustenance that they needed to survive. So they had an ancient city here, and it's still here. Obviously, not as many of them live here now as have in the past. I'm going to change the camera here and let you see what's up on top of this mesa as proof of them actually existing. And we'll tell a little story behind this too. Because what happened to their men is being soft-sold and is happening to men in American society, but most specifically to, or most directly, or most impactfully to men of minority groups, specifically African American men. This is kind of where you can put in what's going on, for example, with Jonathan Majors. Okay? Pause for just a second. I got to get some water. Still a little bit sick, so. All right. Much better. Okay, so I'm going to pick the phone up again here. I'm going to show you the pueblo on top of the mesa. And then we're going to tell a little story. So that up there, on top of that rock, is what we call Sky City, Acoma Pueblo. Now, that has been up there, or this community has been here for 3,000 years. Okay. This particular community has been up on top of that mesa since about the 11th century, so about 1000 AD. So they've been here, or on this particular rock, since just before William the Conqueror. There's another mesa behind me. It's called Enchanted Mesa. The original city was up there before that. But these people have had communities here for at least 3,000 years that we know of. And we know this because in their ancient lore, they tell a story that pretty much bears witness to the formation of the El Mapais lava flow, which here in New Mexico is a very young geologic feature of its formation about 3,000 years ago. So this is a very ancient civilization. This is from the people, or the demographic of people that we draw actually some of our modern heroes from. For example, Tecumseh, who was from the Midwest. He was a Shawnee Indian, Native American. You know, he's fabled as one of the great warriors in American history. The Pueblo people, a related tribe just to the north of me, about 2 hours away, in Taos, which is also a very ancient city, gave us Popeye, who, once the Spaniards arrived, he led the only successful Native American rebellion against European settlers or colonizers in 1680. So these people are progenitors of great warriors, of strong men. I mean, look, they're on top of a 360-foot mesa. Those are buildings up there. They're made of stone and wood and adobe. So, and they built it up there for a reason, obviously for self-defense and security. And they farmed the valley around us here. There's nothing here today. It's mostly juniper and cedar and pine trees, but there's a bare spot as you come in that's about a mile wide, and it runs parallel to a creek up here that you can tell that's where they grew their crops. So these men were strong enough to build these rock buildings and drag pine logs from the surrounding mountains up on top of this hill and build this city, and to farm this land and defend it, and to work with their relatives in the past to protect themselves do the warfare and the man stuff that needed to be done at the time. Not an easy task. Okay. In 1598, Oñate brought the first settlers, Spanish settlers, into New Mexico, and he established a community around what is now Santa Fe. Santa Fe wasn't officially founded until 1610, but when he came in, he, brought the first European colonizers into this area. And of course, he brought a Spanish garrison with him. Now, the Pueblo Revolt happened in 1680, and it was pretty much where the Pueblo Indians of New Mexico chased the Spaniards back down into Mexico because the Spaniards enslaved them and abused them, so on and so forth. And that happened because of things like an event that I'm getting ready to tell you about here at Acoma in the late 1590s and early 1600s. So after Oñate arrived, the Acoma and their neighbors sent a party out to what is now Santa Fe to kind of view these new people, see what they were up to, and they saw that they had the arquebuses, which were an early form of muskets, and they saw what was going on. It was kind of like a mock battle, and the Spaniards were dry firing the arquebuses, and nobody died. So the Acoma decided, well, we don't really much care for these people. So, but these weapons they have, they don't seem to be effective. So when Oñate sent his nephew out here to gain tribute or submission from the Acoma, they killed his nephew, of course, and Oñate got really upset. So he came down, and they had a battle, and of course the Spanish with their muskets and their cannons and their swords, they had a little bit better technology. They obviously won the battle. They won the war. So what the Spanish did was they took all the males from this city, aged, I believe it was aged 10 years and older, that had the possibility of making war. And the ones that survived, they cut off their right foot and they enslaved them. They subjugated them. And because of that, they also did that to several other pueblos in the region. But the story of this one is most notable. It's the one that's most often told. Because of that, obviously the women who were still able-bodied had to take over. Now, in modern Pueblo Indian society today, 400 years later, they still have what's known as a matrilineal structure, meaning that the women are the primary are the primary leaders of the community. Okay, and that comes from what the Spanish did 400 years ago to the men. Okay, and they never really recovered their position. From then till now, over the last 400 years, between the Spanish colonial government, between the Mexican government, and, of course, between the United States government, these individuals, these men in particular, but these people, are just worn down. Psychologically and sociologically worn down. Okay? the land I'm on now, even though this is their traditional homeland, this is where they built that city up on that rock, thousands of years ago. All right, that's a testament to them once being a great and strong people. Okay, obviously, could we do that today? You know, with our technology today, it would still be extremely difficult to do. Okay, it's denigrated from that to now. This is federal property. Okay, yes, we're on an Indian reservation, but if you look at the law and you look at how this is delineated, this land does not belong to them. This is actually public land. Okay, this is federal land. Now, obviously, because it's federal land that's reserved for the Native Americans to live on, a white person like me, or a black person like you, or somebody not of that genotype or of that demographic cannot, that we're allowed to visit, but we can't do stuff like take dirt, take rocks, stuff like that. But these people don't own this land. They don't own it. An example of that is just to the north of here is a mountain by the name of Mount Taylor. It's a 12,000 foot mountain. It's a sacred mountain to these people and to the Navajo to the northwest. But north of that mountain's a basin that's known as the San Juan Basin. And these people, the Laguna, the Navajo, they actually have pieces of reservation out there. There's also a non-reservation land out there. And the San Juan Basin is a minerally rich land or area. It's full of oil, it's full of uranium, it's full of coal, there's some gold there, stuff like that. But which would, if these people actually owned this land, would present them with a really good economic opportunity for them to be self-sufficient, right? If this was legally their property, they could go out there and, mine and develop these resources and make a very bright future for themselves. But because the federal government technically owns the land, it's very difficult for them to do that. Now, in the past, these people in the Navajos to the northwest have been allowed to set up, for example, Navajo Gas, which is now part of Marathon, which was an oil company, and they had mines and stuff like that. And a lot of the uranium that was mined for the American nuclear weapons program came from this area. But it's at the whim of the federal government. So if a progressive federal government starts to take over, and technically this land belongs to them, if the federal government decides that they don't want these people mining anymore or developing the resources anymore, they're cut off. And the Native American people, particularly in states like North Dakota, New Mexico, Arizona, are the poorest, the sickliest, the most psychologically captive demographic in the United States. Okay, Aaron, that's a wonderful story about Native Americans. What the hell does it have to do with black people, with African Americans? What does it have to do with Jonathan Majors? What is all this crap you're telling me in your other video that you made this morning have to do, about baby deletions and you took me and showed me the ghetto, and what does that have to do with anything? The best way to subjugate a demographic is to emasculate their men. So, let's look at the Jonathan Majors situation. Yes, this is happening at large to American men at large. Matter of fact, I'm coming out of a situation 2 years ago where something like this very similar happened to me as a white guy. And, it does happen to white guys. It does happen to other races of people. But statistically, if you were to look, put this all on paper and look at it, it's more prominent to the African American community. And it has been all along. Now, I mentioned that right after, immediately after the passage of the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act of 1964, that something happened that is causing a lot of, or is very closely tightly related to the Jonathan Majors situation today. Okay, so Lyndon Baines Johnson. Okay, actually, I've got a respiratory infection, but I'm going to light a cigarette. I know. Lyndon Baines Johnson. Yes, he pushed through the Civil Rights Act. Yes, he declared war on poverty, which is what we're going to talk about. And yes, he appeared to be a friend of minorities. Okay, let's talk about Lyndon Baines Johnson. Dixie Crack from Texas. Okay, he was actually a member of the Klan. That's a fact. Now, the Civil Rights Act, they have been trying to pass the Civil Rights Act since the end of World War II. Some version of it kept being pushed through Congress every time. And he was the Democrat leader in Congress through most of the 50s on up into the time that he became vice president for John F. Kennedy. And it's just awful funny that until he assumed the presidency, he fought tooth and nail in Congress with the rest of the Southern Democrats in Congress, passing any type of civil rights legislation for African Americans. Okay, and then once President Kennedy was deleted, and I have my thoughts about that. I think that was deliberate. I think he had a hand in that. And there's a whole bunch of theories about that. That's a different discussion for another day. But now that he's sitting in the White House and he's got to propagate his power and the power of his party, okay, obviously it's kind of like, it's kind of like the devil in the Garden of Eden, okay? Non-threatening, nice guy, comes with a good idea to destroy the demographic which he hates. What does that mean? Okay, so passes the Voting Rights Act because he wants to remain popular in his mind. The Voting Rights Act obviously was a good thing because, every human being that's a citizen of this country should have equal rights. Absolutely. Equal protection under the law. Yes, okay. But in his mind, okay, in his thinking, and in the Democrats' thinking at large, that was the honey to attract the, this is a terrible analogy. That was the honey to attract the proverbial flies, right? I'm sorry, y'all ain't flies, but I hope you're all getting the analogy here. But the next year, we get the war on poverty. So what does the war on poverty do? From the New Deal up until the mid-1960s, welfare was in place, but it was in place for people who, obviously from the Great Depression, who had nowhere to go and they needed assistance. All right, nobody likes it. At that point in time, it was kind of a matter of shame if you were on assistance. Well, what the war on poverty did was pretty much it threw open the floodgates, but there were some conditions. And one of the conditions, and this was also targeted towards poor white people, say, for example, in Appalachia as well, because they were also viewed as, remember the Margaret Sanger discussion, weeds, Hispanic people as well in the Southwest, so on and so forth, and Native Americans. Oh, how funny, we're on a Native American reservation. But anyways, it was targeted towards, or there was a condition set in there that okay, yes, you can receive assistance, but you can only receive assistance if there's no man in the house. And given the fact that we're just now coming out of Jim Crow, and certain demographics of people, because of Jim Crow and other things that have happened in our history, were at an economic disadvantage. They made it to where these benefits, minus the man in the house, would actually pay out more economically than if the man were to stay in the house and try to work him and his family's way out of poverty by engaging in the market system and, just through natural progression of experience, education, things like that, okay? And this was deliberate. And if you go back, and this is just purely anecdotal, I'm doing this off the top of my head, so I may be wrong on this, but if you go back and you look at who organically, not the Democrats who wanted to come along just to win votes, but who organically supported the civil rights legislations all through the 40s, 50s, and early 60s. And then you go and you look at who supported the war on poverty, party-wise in Congress, and party-wise politically. You're going to start to see that now all of a sudden, the people on the left, the Democrats, were all for this war on poverty, which removed men out of the homes of poor white people, say, for example, in Appalachia, and poor black people who, just because of the nature of the cycle of history, were unfortunately economically below their peers and other people groups, poor Native Americans, so on and so forth, right? There was a lot of Democrats that bought onto that. A lot of people on the left. And then, of course, 1973, we get Roe v. Wade. And the quote I read earlier this morning on my first video. Okay? So, these things aren't an accident. What does that have to do with Jonathan Majors? Well, it's like Eve in the garden, okay? When did Satan talk to Eve? That's not specifically written in Scripture that Adam wasn't there, okay? But it's kind of implied by the context that he wasn't around. That Eve was without her cover. Okay? This isn't to say that women are less than men. No, they're not. Okay? They are equal to men in standing. Like, for example, legal protections and civil rights and stuff like that. But they're different. Okay? So, where men think and move a certain way, women think and move in different ways. So, we actually do need each other. And women do need men. Obviously for protection, for a lot of reasons. Physically, but also mentally, psychologically. But specifically mentally and logically. Okay? So, when did that snake, it's implied in Scripture, that snake, that Satan in the guise of a serpent, approached Eve, and you just by reading, she was alone, without Adam. And then, of course, he sold her on the idea that pretty much has affected mankind ever since then. But it's the government, the elites, the anointed, as Thomas Sowell likes to say. I'll call them the Margaret Sanger people, are keen on this idea because it came, in my religious belief, it comes from the same evil pit of hell. Okay, so they used that. Let's get these people separated. Okay? Let's keep these men separated and weak. Let's sell these women on the fact that it's liberating to not have children. And if they do, that these men might be dangerous. And we've got to, if they stand, remember what I told you about, or remember what I read in the quote about the rebellious members that Margaret Sanger was talking about? Y'all getting the picture? Y'all understanding this? This isn't just some white guy coming up on a video just trying to get some fame. This is me talking honestly. Why do I care about this? Look, yes, it's affecting me indirectly because as the culture shifts, as one part of the culture shifts, it draws the other parts. I get it, okay? And yes, I suffered because of it directly, okay? But I'm a white guy, and most of this audience is not. So why? Because it's fucking evil. And if I step back, if you step back and take a look at all of this, and you just kind of sit back and you're like, and you look at history and what's been done to other people groups. We could discuss what the Egyptians did to the Israelis in the book of Exodus. Abortion, enslaving the men. So it's the same pattern. Y'all, these people on the left, they couldn't keep you in chains in slavery, okay? And yes, white people like Abraham Lincoln and the white Christians in the North and all that stuff, and people within your own population like Harriet Tubman, yes, they were all part of that. But they couldn't keep you in chains that way. And so they tried to keep you in chains through, sharecropping and Jim Crow. And they lost out on that deal. So this is the most diabolical of the plans. Because if this continues, I was not joking. This is not something for me to be funny. This is not something that Whitey's going to get, some joy over. Y'all, if this continues between what's going on with the men, what's going on with the women, what's going on with the children, Margaret Sanger's going to get her wish. They want to wipe you out, but they know they cannot do this by force anymore, because they understand at least that y'all are wise enough to look out for that, okay? But what I'm trying to get to communicate is that I hope some people open their eyes and see that this is a bad sale. And this sale is the most diabolical, because in a sick way, it's convincing members of your community to do to you what they wished they could do themselves, which is to literally wipe you off the face of the earth. Point blank, period. That's not my strength. This is me sitting here looking at this. Now, I'm going to pause the video right here, because obviously, because of what I told you, I can't get my dirt here. And maybe I kind of fudged it a little bit, but whatever, okay. I wanted to bring you guys out here and show you this and sit here and talk about this and bring that story to you, because in a very subtle, sinister, underhanded way, like the serpent in the garden, that's what's going on. And, I'll tell you a little story. When I was a kid, I'm Gen X, right? So, and fortunately, I came up with parents who were colorblind. Well, my mom is. My dad's not really. But he tries, okay? And I'll give him. But I came up colorblind. And so, one of my best friends growing up when I was in elementary school, his name was Chris Coates, a black kid. And until his family moved away, because he was in a military family, man, we were thick as thieves. I was 8, 9, 10 years old. And it was just me and Chris, man. We did everything together. We went to each other's houses. We played. He's my best buddy. And you know what's funny? I was 10 years old before somebody pointed out to me that Chris Coates was a black person, a black boy, and that he was different than me. It just, and when they did, I was like, and so, why is that important? And so, it was so, the fact that little boy was different than me. I could tell by looking at him that he looked different, but, it was kind of like, okay, well, it's kind of like my buddy next door, Chris Lee, who was a white kid. Okay, he's different than I am. We're different people, but it was just like, okay. And I didn't know what to do with it, because the natural tendency, at least in our innocence, is that we're just people. And I gotta sit and I think, and I'm like, okay, I put a uniform on for 17 years, and I got caught in that stupid Obama drawdown, and it's a mess, and I eventually did get a pension, but, and I went to combat for 5 years, and I put that uniform on for everybody. And, the man on my left and my right, we just didn't care. It was just like I was with Chris Coates again when I was a little boy, And I believe in killing people who do evil things. Let's go to war and let's take those people out, because they're destroying other people, okay? And this bothers me. Because when I sit and I look at it and I really think about it, this is a long game, underhanded, sinister way of literally wiping out. I hate to use the term race because I believe that there is one race and that's the human race, but literally wiping out a quote unquote race of people. And in a way, selling them on it, them doing it to themselves. Okay, I'm going to pause the video here, but I'm going to stop this video here because the way that this is working for me. And I'll come up with another one with a little bit more points of discussion, because in my next one, I hope it's very difficult to do, to see if I can capture just a video of a Native American, just a regular Native American man. If I can. If not, then we'll maybe look at where, some of where they live today outside of this, because they do have, not all of them live here. Some of them have communities outside of here, and I'm not allowed to take photos up here. But either way, just to kind of drive the point home of, if this is not arrested, what the future looks like for yet another demographic. But I want you to think about what I just said. And yeah, it's offensive. I'm going to give you a Lyndon Baines Johnson quote. And this is where I apologized earlier for the rough language on my first video. And I want you to take the words that I use into context, because I am quoting the man who gave you the war on poverty. Quoting this, okay? Lyndon Baines Johnson actually said, with the passage of the war on poverty, actually no, on his sales point, the Pied Piper point of getting y'all into what we're looking at now, when he appeared to switch sides and push the civil rights legislation, obviously for his own power and the power of the Democrat Party. This is Lyndon Baines Johnson thinking and speaking to one of his associates. I'll have these niggers voting Democrat for the next 200 years. He said that. Now, given everything that I just told you, think on that. Really think on that. Okay? Angry Man. He's one of my heroes. And yes, he's helped me out a lot as an individual. Okay? As a man, to move in spaces. But when he's talking to y'all about certain things, specifically for his demographic, these are the things that he's trying to lead you to get you to see. Okay? And okay, maybe I'm offensive for just coming blah out there like that, but this is what he's talking about. This is what he sees. Okay? So, given that frame, okay, he's literally trying to save your life. And to get you to save your own life. Not just to, yes, we all want to succeed. And he's very helpful at getting all men to listen to him and to be better men. But specifically for you guys. For y'all, okay? Specifically for his demographic. He's doing that, and he wants y'all to get up and run. But he's trying to shake your shoulders a little bit. Be like, look, y'all, if we don't stop, if we don't fix this, they want us to die. They don't want us here. And that's wrong. That's evil. So, think what you might think of what I've just said. Think of what you might think of me. If you hate me, okay, whatever. If you think that I'm being inappropriate, okay. Okay. But I'm going to tell the truth. And as far as I can see, that's the truth. If I take the 80,000 foot view, like I'm looking at the earth from high up, and I get a wide lens view of what's going on, that's my assessment. And it's disgusting. It's evil. And it's horrible. And maybe next time you click on his show and he starts to go in, you'll understand that, okay, wow, yeah, he is being rough. That white dude in New Mexico was offensive, but okay. Okay, I see what's going on here. He's throwing me a life preserver. He's trying to save my life. See you on the next one.